Alright, before we get started, Pistons Twitter. I love y'all. Every single one of you. Every account on Pistons Twitter makes every game special for me. This is not directed at any individual person. This is just my opinion, my take. It doesn't diminish your opinion or your take or anything. But since I'm seeing this Sadiq Bey is the greatest three-point shooter in Pistons franchise history BS on my timeline, I gotta chime in. I just have to, man. Listen, let me start off by saying Sadiq Bey is a great player. And just because I don't think he's the best three-point shooter in Pistons franchise history yet, doesn't mean I don't think he will be someday. I think he definitely has the potential to be the greatest in Pistons history someday. And that day might be in the not-so-distant future. It might be 1 or 2 seasons from now if these variables fall into line. Listen, Sadiq plays in an era where defense is frowned upon and penalized, where you're not allowed to get in the landing space of, touch, or even breathe on a three-point shooter, or they're going to the free throw line. All you can do is just put a hand up. That's all you can do against a three-point shooter in today's NBA. He plays on a bad team that teams don't game plan for a lot, that they sit their best players against, and he gets a lot of attempts. He hasn't been in the postseason. He hasn't experienced the kind of intensity and defense that comes in the postseason, and I just think that guys like Chauncey Billups in this kind of an era of basketball would feast, and I'm not ready to crown Bey yet. Listen, so what does he have to do? What does he have to do then? What does he have to do to reach this mountaintop in my eyes? It's a fair question, and I think it's one that should be asked. Listen, he has to be consistent at this. 2 seasons, one was a shorter season, where he had a lot of inconsistent stretches. And he's still done this well. That is very impressive. But can you do it when the Pistons start getting game planned for? Can you do it when we start getting better? Can you do it with less shot attempts? Can you do it in the postseason, in meaningful games that matter? My suspicion is yes. We've heard the stuff with the Joker. We know he's hit a game winner. We know he has the killer mentality. But he hasn't had the opportunity to prove himself in the playoffs yet against really strict defenses. He hasn't had this opportunity yet, which is why I think it's an unfair debate to have right now, because he hasn't had the experience necessary to even qualify for this debate in my eyes. Like, I had the privilege of being old enough to remember Mr. Big Shot, Chauncey Billups. And let me tell you, the defense that was played back then in the regular season was better than the defense that we see in the postseason today. It simply was. It was not uncommon for your team to shoot absolutely terribly from the three-point line, yet somehow score like 85 points, 80 points, and still win the game by like 5-10 points. Because defense won games back then. Listen, and Billups in that era, he still made clutch three-point shots. He still was consistent. He was the one that teams were game planning for besides Richard Hamilton every night. He was like the primary scorer, the most reliable on the team besides maybe Richard Hamilton. But three-point shooting-wise, he was the best on the team and the most reliable. In that era where teams were that strict on defense, he hit game winners in the postseason. He didn't get the name Mr. Big Shot for nothing. And Sadiq Bey hasn't had the opportunity to hit those big shots yet, which is why this debate is so unfair, right? And many would argue that Chauncey Billups is not even the best in Pistons franchise history, that there are 2 or 3 guys ahead of him, like Atkins, for instance. So Sadiq Bey, I got him at the 3rd best three-point shooter in Pistons franchise history right now, with the potential and the expectation that he's going to be the number 1 three-point shooter in Pistons franchise history if given the opportunity and the chance to show out in meaningful games. But he isn't there yet. Ultimately, this debate is premature to me. It's unfair to him, but I also think it's a compliment to him that we are even having this debate and this discussion, because it shows how much he's grown in just 1 season. And the fact that he's being compared to the likes of Chauncey Billups even right now should be a really great compliment for him to have. And since Pistons Twitter was having this debate, and they seem to have recency bias a little bit, and they're putting him at the mountaintop, I had to chime in. And like, I want to repeat again, he has the potential to building blocks. I'm not slandering him at all, but there's just too many unknowns with his game right now. There's just too many unknowns. That's it. If he fulfills those unknowns, no doubt he's number 1. I have no problem with crowning him the number 1 on the Pistons all-time franchise history three-point shooter, but he has to check those check marks off. Thank you.